Hey y'all, Super X here, and today we are going to do a run through of the RM2 rebuildable atomizer, RBA 2.0, REOmizer. It's called different names, but this is what you are going to get right here. That being the air hole in the front, juice is fed through that hole in the 510 connection, and it comes up into the atomizer when you have two posts where the wire goes through, two screws that hold the wire in place, and other than that, it's pretty simple. So let's go through how we're going to rebuild this. What I'm going to use as a base to build on is this cartometer. I'm going to just screw this in because I wanted to go through wire. I'm going to use 27 gauge Kanthal A1. We're going to torch, or it's also called anneal, this wire, and basically all you're going to do is make it nice and orange in the area that you're going to build with your Bic, your torch, whatever it is you use. Alright, so there, that wire is going to be ready. Now let's go through needles. I run these short blunt tip lure lock needles to make a coil. You can get long. I had longer ones. I like these ones better because it's easier with the going around motion. This is a 16 gauge, which is about the same size as 16 gauge drill bit. This is a 17 gauge. This is my needle of choice. I like it. It's just the 17 gauge is a smaller diameter than the 16 gauge. Very small difference. That's close to this. People use all kinds of things to wrap coils on. Like I said, drill bits, paper clips. The first micro coil was born on this nail right here, which I liked it except for the pointy end, and this was kind of a bear to grasp. Not as easy to grasp as, say, this nice end of this mold. I also like something that has a stop that I can shove the coil up against. So let's get into wrapping it. Wire, we're just going to hold this like so, and I'm going to grab a nice length of that tail and put it behind the needle. And now once I've got it behind there, I'm just going to grab that and hold it steady. And then I'm just going to get into starting to wrap it around this needle. I'm going to go for 10 wraps. So that's one wrap. I'm trying to get them as close as possible, as tight as possible. I am holding the wire with a good amount of tension as I'm wrapping it. And we're 4 wraps in. And that is about 10 wraps right there. This is not going to be a perfect coil in the sense of aesthetics, but it is going to vape perfect. And there's lots of neat tips and tricks as you get more advanced at this. This is kind of a beginner, just getting started. You've never rebuilt before. This is being the perfect video for you to watch if you've never done this before. Once you get into it, we've got all kinds of different micro coiling configurations and that kind of stuff. But for now, that's pretty much your coil. We're just pulling it tight to get these legs kind of straight. And again, that's it. Hopefully I can even zoom in just a hair on that for you. Not perfect by any means. If you're looking for total perfection, you will have to, you could do more. You could wrap it tighter. That's what I do. I don't really squeeze or anything. I just wrap it tighter. In this case, for speed and to show you what is going to vape awesome, we're just rolling it like that. So now, if you see the orientation of those holes, you'll see that there's 2 of them. So we're going to have to put one of these legs in each of these holes. I'm going to start with this one, and then I'm going to do that one second. So in order to do that, I've left these tails extremely long, which I like to do with my wire. I don't skimp on wire, so I'm going to cut this one nice and short, so it'll go in second. Okay, that done. We're going to just stick these tails in these. There we go, we're in. So now that we're in, we're just going to pull this up. If you notice, I've kept my mold on, and right about this point in the build, I'm going to switch over to this side of the mold on this side of the coil. Just put it right back through. Pull it in tight. So now you could sort of see where we're getting at with this. What I'm going to do is tighten the screws. Push this in. My goal when I'm building this coil is for that coil to be right about there when I'm done. In that location, centered over the juice hole. And right about there. So let's tighten them down. Just going to use a small screwdriver like this. Pop it into screws and give her a little tighten. Good chance we're going to make some more adjustments to this coil, so let's give her a look. At this point I could usually squash it together a little bit more too to tighten them up. I like my wraps to touch. There's a lot of, the old myth was, well, your wraps can't touch, you'll get a short. That was a very old myth. I don't know where it originated. I haven't been around vaping that long, but they can touch. And we find that the more they touch, the better they vape. This isn't, again, perfect. There's some gaps, but it's still going to vape awesome. A couple of gaps are good. So now we've got that in that location. Where we're trying to get this coil is not too close to the posts, but you don't want it out where it's touching the cap or going to come in contact with anything metal. So I'm going to pull them out a little bit so it's basically centered on that hole. Okay. Elevation wise, I'm going to like this coil to be slightly higher on the juice hole side. So we can just take our finger with 27 gauge wire and push it down just a little bit like that. And stick this mold back in on this side of the coil and gently lift up this side some. So I like it to have a little slope to it. Don't know if it does anything, that's just me. And that's that. When you get ready to build this, you will not be intimidated. You're going to see how easy it is, how intuitive it is. Now what we're going to do is we're going to trim these wires out. First thing we're going to do is we're going to measure the resistance. This probably will come in right about 1 ohm, maybe a tiny bit less. I'm thinking it'll be about a 0.9. 0.87. Killer. Let's do it. It's going to be a nice warm vape, but I'm going to give, once we fire it, I'm going to show you why that for me isn't a big deal. Normally if that was a 30 gauge wire coil coming in at that resistance, I'd rebuild it. I like about a 2 ohm coil at 30 gauge because it heats up right away. So that's it. Again, we're going to tighten up the screws, check them again, and we're just going to trim the wire. Some pretty basic tools here. You don't need to go crazy on anything fancy and special. I trim my wire right with the top of the screw holes. And then I'm going to come back through with my tweezers or whatever you like to use and just bend these wire tails back up towards the screws because you do not want them to come in contact with anything but basically those terminal posts. You don't want to touch the cap, the rim, nothing inside this atomizer do you want to contact anything but what it's contacting. Now the beauty of the RM2 RBA 2.0 REOmizer is that it's a ceramic base, so that eliminates one dimension of potential shorting right there. So you can get them nice and low and into the bowl. I still want to get this one just a hair lower. I'm gonna explain that again. It was already explained to me by PDIB that if a coil sits high, you get more throat hit, high in relation to the air hole. If it sits low, you get less throat hit. I'm not a throat hit guy. I'm more about just nice big clouds and a nice satisfying vape. So there you go again. The coil's ready to rock. We're ready to wick it at this point with cotton. I make a habit of every time I do anything at all with the coil, like I'm still kind of fiddling with those legs to make sure they're on there. Anytime I do anything at all with it, I just make sure my screws are tight. And this one, as you can see, came a little bit loose. So we're just snugging them down. We're not going crazy. You'll want to use one of these little screwdrivers. Anything big, you risk messing your the terminal posts up. So there you go. Nice zoom in for you. That's the dealio. Now we're going to put some cotton through it. I'm going to put it on the mod and we're going to fire it. Cotton. Use CVS sterile rolled cotton. It comes in a big box. Then I'll grab like a wet Bounty, just moisten my fingertips and a piece of this stuff. It just takes a little bit. Holding it in one hand, and I'm going to twist in this hand right here. Just twist them up. Hard to do this on camera. Now we're kind of starting to look like a wick here, huh? We're twisting it till it's dense. We're on a dense wick, not a thick wick, but a dense wick. Your wick, the finished product, you want to be just wide enough to get and make contact with all sides of the coil. You do not want to be pulling that wick through. You want to thread it through gently and pull it with slight resistance. So now we've got our wick. I mean, that was pretty difficult, wasn't it? We're just going to trim the tip off, get that out of the way, moisten this again with my little bounty and the fingers, and now we're just going to push it through that coil. Do you see that? Pretty easy, huh? Imagine that. There is no fear to RBA. I'm probably the most in-technical geek in the world. I'm not a technical person. And I'm trimming this wick. I'm trimming it basically even with the edges of the bowl. And that's it. See that? This is ready to vape. This coil and wick is ready to vape. Other than we're going to tuck these wick tails in here so they're in the deal. And now let's put it on the. We're just going to put this on. I'm putting it on without the cap. Oh, missed an important point in this exercise, and I'm going to do a quick camera adjustment upwards here. The little O-ring that comes with your RBA, it's right here. Just slip it down in here and make sure that it is clear and outside of the 510 connector. You want it to be centered in there. Then we're going to stick the RBA base on. When I finish with this coil, you got two choices with it putting this on. You either adjust it so the mod is going to be in the position you want to vape, or you adjust your vaping position so when you're hitting the mod, the coil is basically pointing up. Mine is going to be, I like to get these nice and tight on there. Meeny, meeny, miny, mo, where's it going to land? Right about there. So that means when I'm vaping, it'll be pointing somewhat up. The air hole is going to be right here, and I'm going to hold this up to my mouth and hit it. And so if it's here anywhere from 10 to 2 o'clock on your deal, if you vape this way, you'd want the coil to be sort of over here. If the mod's in this position, if you turn your finger here and vape, you'd want the coil kind of over in this area. Pretty intuitive. You'll get the hang of it. So that's that. So you'll see now when I put you see where my coil is. When I put this cap on, the air hole should be generally right. If you remember where that coil was, it should end up right about there. Like magic. Okay, so let's fire this bad boy real quick. We're going to pull that cotton out because firing it with that, well, yeah, let's fire it. Let me tell you why I like 27 gauge wire. We're going to make a new wick, no sweat. Cut off some lights here so we can fire this coil up. Battery in, A&W, IMR 18650, nothing but in my mods, my Reo's mods. This little coil right here heats up pretty quick, doesn't it? New wick right there. Look how long it took to re-wick that. No time flat. See ya. And see ya. Okay, tuck it down in just a bit. I don't like a lot of wick tails on my deals. I just don't. It doesn't require a big tail. Okay, now watch the squonking action, how it works. Squonking is pressing the bottle to deliver juice to the RBA. So I'm going to squonk this up, and you see the juice roll up into the bowl. I let that well up nice and good, get everything nice and wet. That was like a 3-second press. It's about how you'll want to squonk throughout the day. Put the drip tip in the top of the RBA, that's simple. Stick it on. So we're good here. So you got it, how to build your RM2. See ya.